Okay, good afternoon. My name is Bill Dean. I'm co-chairman of the Safety Roundtable meeting along with Steve. I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting today. We're going to do a double header today. We're going to do the Safety Roundtable meeting plus the Ironworker Impact safety call that they have. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bill Brown. Is Bill not on?
No, we're having a few technical difficulties. We're trying to get him on the meeting.
Okay, if you could go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Dean.
Good afternoon, everyone. Eric Dean here. Anyone that's new to the group, Eric Dean, I'm the general president. I look forward to the day when we can meet again. Last year, we were meeting in the lovely Willard Hotel with beautiful harp music accompanying us in the hallway, and it was kind of peaceful and very melodic. But nothing's too important than the safety of our members and your employees. So I know Bill talked about a 2-for-1. Every month, we've been having a safety call-in. And I want to thank Pete Hayes from Red Cedar and Steve for changing that content. Sometimes it's worker-driven, sometimes it's employer-driven, sometimes it's regulatory-driven, but it's always meaningful. You know, for a while there, we were taken over by COVID, and then presently, you know, we're still just trying to navigate to keep our members coming home safe every day, regardless of the health effect or the regular safety issues that we incur as employers and as labor leaders on behalf of our members. As far as our long-term, short-term goals, obviously we have a change in elected administration in the United States. We'll be working closely with the Department of Labor, and we're going to work on some initiatives through the Safety and Health Department. Number one priority for us is our Ironworker Safety Supervisor certification program. We got one, we're going to schedule it for October of 2021, try and get past the vaccination period and get back to some normalcy. That's been something that's been met with wide acceptance. I know that there's employers that are utilizing ironworkers as those safety supervisors, and we want that third-party validation and certification program. We're going to continue to work on new OSHA standards for the reinforcing steel and post-tensioning operations. As you're aware, this is an ongoing effort. When I first came to Washington as General Secretary, we had regular meetings with the Department of Labor. Kind of gave us a stiff arm. They pushed us off on state OSHA plans, and we worked it through different channels, and it's bubbling up organically in different parts around the country. We're not giving up. We want safety on the job site for our steel erectors. We want safety on the job for our reinforcing and rebar placers. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about and building on the Ironworkers Impact 3M partnership for personal protective equipment. We formed this alliance long before COVID. They have come to the forefront as far as the most recent COVID crisis, but they've been in the safety business. Our contractors provide that safety equipment for our members, and our training department trains on safety initiatives in addition to the safety department. It's something that we're working closely with as far as that goes. The other issue that's a real core component of the safety department, I asked Steve, is the expansion of fall protection training and modifying either existing structures or replacing structures at your training facilities. And the issue more than anything is that we are getting a lot of disturbing photographs for our magazine, for the convention, of improper use of fall protection equipment. Number one fault that I'm seeing on a regular basis, using retractable lifelines in a horizontal position, which is not their designed application. That's just one example. We need to focus on the proper use of equipment, the proper training, and to keep our members safe and to protect the contractors from the liability of where jobs are at. So the issue for me is I came on here and I come on here. I have another call right after this. I can't stay for the entire length. I want to thank you for what you do daily to protect our members. I want to thank all of our staff for what they do, whether it be a regulatory issue, whether it be compliance, whether it be training, whether it be oversight or supervision. Everyone has a part in our members' safety, knowing that they're going home every day. So no matter what your tasks are, I want to thank you for attending this event. Thank you for participating in an ongoing fashion. And Steve, I made a poor-tasted joke about safety being boring or whatever. It's much needed, and I want to take all those remarks and I'll eat them with a big shit sandwich that I owe you guys an apology, because you guys are doing the Lord's work. And I ask you to pay attention, stay through the call. And with that, I don't want to chew up too much of the time. And I thank all the contractors that are on the line, all the labor leaders that are on the line. Most importantly, keep those rank and file members safe. And I'm going to turn it over to my management partner of impact and on the National Training Fund, Mr. Bill Brown. Thank you all. And I'll put myself on mute and I'll be around for a while.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, it worked. I'm in. Okay. Well, I'm sorry I missed the front end of this meeting, so I don't know exactly where our protocol is now. Has Bill Dean spoken yet?
Yes.
Yes, Bill.
Okay. All right, so it's just down to me. Well, all right, then briefly, just thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks to our guest speakers and General President and my partner, Eric Dean, and my labor co-chair for this panel, Bill Dean. Hate having to do it this way, but it is what it is. And I know we're going to be really pressed for time, so I'll just leave it there. And if I don't get to do it before we sign off, wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday season. So who am I turning it over to? To Pete?
Yeah, I believe you are.
Thanks, Pete.
Want to welcome everyone to what like we said, we're doing a joint Ironworkers Safety Roundtable and the Impact International Safety Call. So this is the last one of the year. I too want to wish everyone Merry Christmas, and again, thank you for being here with us. And back in July, Wayne Creasup, who is with the Ironworkers Safety Department, had done a pre-qualification seminar similar to this. From that, we did a survey and we realized that there were a lot more questions needed to be answered, especially on the safety side of what does it take to qualify to work on industrial projects for the big owners. So Wayne is going to have a few things he's going to share with us, and from that we're going to lead into our time with CC Weldon. I'll introduce her in a minute. I want to remind everyone that at the bottom or somewhere on your screen there's a Q&A tab. We're going to encourage questions for our speaker. I ask that you would go through that. There's also a chat tab. You're certainly welcome to talk amongst yourselves on that. Wayne typically monitors that for us. But if you have questions that you want for our speaker, I would ask that you would use the Q&A tab. So with that, like I said, our first speaker is going to be Wayne. And so Wayne, if you'd take over from there, that'd be great.
That's terrific. Thank you, Pete. Hello, everyone. And as everyone said, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a wonderful, healthy, and safe new year. As Pete was describing here, we did a pre-qualification webinar back in July that talked about pre-qualification. And at that time, we talked about the importance of managing a contractor's safety and health program as far as managing their incidents, which impacts their incident rates. We talked about experience modification rates, as well as the overall pre-qualification process and utilizing it for third party, especially how it's turned into a lot of owner clients utilizing third party pre-qualification as the main tool for pre-qualification instead of just using traditional paper checklists or having employers submit all of their information. Now they're letting third parties do it, and contractors have to pay a fee to be a part of those, to utilize those services. So, so what we did is after our webinar, I was asked to put together a survey, and I put together a survey of around 22 questions that we reached out to our employer community and asked them a little bit more about, to get a little more into the weeds about what their experience has been in utilizing third-party pre-qualification services. So a few of the slides I'm going to share with you today just kind of go along with some of those slides and what some of those results are. So one of the questions was, in this slide, we asked them to please rate their experience with these third-party pre-qualification services. We included Avetta, which includes PICS and Browse, ISNet, PEC Safety, Veriforce, Construct Secure, and then there are some others, and we asked them to identify those. And what we found is that most of them typically used ISNet, Avetta, and Veriforce, and then and so a little bit of a surprise is that they actually had their experience was pretty much on the average and not real positive. So it's a lot of a big struggle for a lot of our small and medium-sized employers in trying to work with some of these different third-party vendors. Next slide, please. So one of the other questions that we asked, because this is a subscription service that these contractors have to pay for, that our signatory employers have to pay for, they're paying these annual services, whether they're bidding work or not, to be able to utilize these third-party services. And so we wanted to know, how much are they spending? So a great majority of them are spending $5,000 or less a year, but then we have some employers, as you can see on the pie chart here, that shared with us, they're spending more than $20,000 a year on just in subscription services for these different third-party pre-qualification services. So again, it's something that's adding up over the course of time. It doesn't mean that they got the work. It just means that they're spending that as part of that subscription to get their foot in the door to even have that opportunity to bid. Next slide, please. So some of the questions we asked specifically, what part of pre-qualification adds to your cost? We wanted to get a little bit of an idea of what they were dealing with. And some of the response that we got was that it was a confusing process. It takes too much time. They need to have a dedicated safety person to manage everything, the subscription costs, and then we also asked them to identify some other issues that they may also be having. And what we wanted to make sure of is that safety and health was not a deterrent. So if they had high incident rates and high experience modification rate, that was not a deterrent to those contractors going after this third-party pre-qualification. And what we found is that some of the feedback we received is that they were frustrated because they were requesting irrelevant information, what they felt was irrelevant. The third party doesn't understand the type of work that our employers were performing. There was an inconsistency in the definitions. There was a difference between what each different client requires. And then they lacked the personal contact with someone with that independent third party to be able to help them work through the process. So they were very frustrated with it. Next slide. And so we also then asked if they wanted assistance. And then we wanted to get a little bit of a time frame on how soon or how quickly they needed that assistance. And so a large majority of them were a little bit further out there. We had some on the short term, but most of them were a little bit further out. So what all this means is that as we started delving into this, we identified, and some of the feedback that I received from a number of our respondents, they just wanted this to go away. They hate dealing with the third parties. They hate dealing with having to do this pre-qualification. And unfortunately, that's not going away. We're not going to be able to make it go away. And it's here to stay, and we're going to have to deal with it. So as a result of this survey, we've been working with CC Weldon and asked her to come on to speak a little bit more about all the different impact of what's going on with these third parties. And she has a lot more specific experience that she's going to get into to help describe exactly what employers can do to help make this a little bit easier process for them. So I'm going to turn it back over to Pete, and Pete will introduce CC. Thank you.
All right, Wayne, thanks for that. So yeah, like we said, next up is Cece Weldon. Many of you are familiar with her. She's been involved with the Ironworkers for quite some time. I know I met her when she first signed an agreement with the Ironworkers back with General President Walt Wise. So she's got a long history there. We want to thank her for joining. And so Cece is the president of IBEX Strategy Group. Prior to her time at IBEX, Ms. Weldon was the vice president of corporate safety, health, and management for AECOM. In her role, she had one of her main responsibilities was management of third-party pre-qual accounts for AECOM. So Cece, welcome, and we look forward to your presentation. And again, those that have questions for her, please pose them in the Q&A box, and we'll take them as they come. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete, and good day, everyone. It's so good to be with you. Can you hear me okay, Pete?
Yep, we hear you fine.
Okay, just want to make sure. So yes, good day, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this presentation. I know this is a topic for everyone, and I have a limited time here. I could talk to you about this topic for hours and give you lots of details and tips, but I have limited time. So again, if you have questions, please enter it in the Q&A. And even if we don't cover them during the presentation today, we'll do our best to get you an answer after today's presentation. So next slide, please. As Pete mentioned, I did handle these third-party pre-qualification companies and accounts in my prior role, and it was for a long time. I was trying to do the math on how long, and it was probably over 15 years. And with that, you know, my company was one of the first companies to be one of the first members of IS Networld way back in the day. So we got to go through the growing pains with them, and now they've made so many improvements and a lot of different changes. In addition to that, they started off in the Americas, and now they've expanded, you know, into other countries, Mexico, Canada. So the information I'm going to talk to you about today is all based on my experience, what I went through, what our company went through as a large contractor, but the same things and same issues apply to small contractors as well. So next slide, please. What we're going to cover in the next little bit is I'm going to give you a little background and history on these companies. We're going to talk about the benefits of pre-qualification. We're going to talk about some of the common reasons that we see companies disqualified, and then lastly, some do's and don'ts. Next, please. So background and history. So what are these when we talk about third-party databases? I know a lot of us have some fine curse words for what these are called, but in general, what they are online contractor management database companies that help owners select contractors to meet regulatory and internal owner company requirements. That's basically what their main function is. The big players in this market were the ones that Wayne presented on his screen, IS Networld. They started back in 2001. They currently have 650 owners in their system and over 75,000 contractors. Avetta, again, formerly known as Pix and Brow, started in 2003, have 330 owners, 55,000 contractors, and Veriforce, formerly known as PEC, started in 2001, have over 225 owners and 11,000 contractors. And most of these contractors, many contractors, are members of multiple of these systems because it's all based on which systems the owners use. So some of your owners may use IS Networld and some Veriforce. So they have to participate in both, and that's what drives up the cost that you saw in Wayne's presentation. So why do we want you to participate? You know, most of the major owners are using these companies. I hate to say it, but it's a necessary evil. If you want to do business with these major owners, you have to participate with some of these third-party pre-qualification databases, companies. You know, if you want to increase your market share and you want to grow your business, you have to participate in these. So what we're asking all of you to do is, you know, don't be afraid, don't be frustrated and pissed off at these companies. We want you to not step back. We want you to step forward and try and look at this with a new outlook and try and be willing to participate with some of these major owner clients. So how do you get set up? This is always the biggest hurdle that we face when talking about these third-party contractor databases. First and foremost, you know, we need to figure out who do you want to work for and how to go about doing that. So first, talk to your existing clients. Are they using any of these pre-qualification companies? If they are, who are they using? For the companies that you want to work for, start building the relationship with those owners. Reach out to them. Maybe reach out to their safety group, reach out to their procurement group, find out which of the third-party qualification database companies they might be using. And then also, if there's a major proposal coming up, it will usually state in there that you have to be pre-qualified using one of these major companies. So those are some different avenues to go in and figure out which of these companies is right for you, if any of them. I will caution you, you can go on these third-party qualification database companies' websites and see the different owners that they serve. So that'll help give you some good ideas as well. But be cautious there, because even if a company has their logo on that third-party pre-qualification database, it doesn't mean that all business units of that company use that third-party pre-qualification company. So again, who do you want to work for? A good example of that is Shell. Shell in the past has used multiple of these third-party companies, depending on which business unit it is. They're trying to get away from that, but I'm sure that it still exists out there. So do your homework before you automatically start signing up for these. Next, once you decide which third-party qualification companies you want to get set up with, you contact that company, you get your account set up, and then from there, you pay the fee to get set up with them, and then you input the data into the system. So the fee can vary. It totally usually depends on the number of employees that you have. They don't always publicize this on their website. You can dig into ISNetworld's website and go to frequently asked questions to figure out how much it costs. They have a little tool in there to help you. Theirs varies, them being the largest, it varies anywhere from, it could be maybe $2,000 a year for a really small, maybe 1 to 10-person company, all the way up to $18,000 a year if your company has more than 2,500 employees. So that's part of doing your homework. You've got to figure out how much all this is going to cost you as well. And then inputting the information into the system is by far the most labor-intensive part of doing all of this. And that includes inputting your OSHA metrics, your certificate of insurance, and then there's all the stuff that goes into inputting all your policies and procedures for your safety program into there as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in another slide. And then from there, once you input all your information in the system, what happens is you get a score back. And it's depending on the system, it's going to either be, it's either going to be like an F, they go A through F, or they do, red, yellow, green. So, if you don't have the best possible score you can get, meaning a green or an A, then I encourage you to look in the system and figure out why you're not getting the best possible score and see what you can do to improve that score. And then last but not least, you have to continually monitor your score. I don't mean every day, but check in at least every 2 weeks to make sure everything's okay, nothing has changed, because there are things that go on in the system in the background that could tweak your score. Maybe your certificate of insurance expired or something. So you got to be on top of it. Next, please. So what are the most common reasons for disqualification? I get this question a lot, and here are the top 3. There are other reasons, but these are the big ones. One, your company's experienced a fatality, or you've had some type of citation. And they usually look back at a period of the last 5 years. Some of them only do 3 years, but some of them are 5 years. So, does that mean that you can never work for that client? The answer to that is no. Every single thing in these third-party pre-qualification database systems, for the most part, has some way to work with it. When it comes to fatalities and citations, what will happen is you'll need to submit a statement saying what happened in association to one of these, and then from there, the owners look at it on their end, and the owners determine whether or not they need more information from you. You can request a variance from one of the owners if you're currently working for them or you're going to be working for them in the future. Again, you have to submit that information through the third-party pre-qual companies, and then it's the owner that determines whether or not you'll get the variance. As an aside here, when you work through these third-party pre-qualification companies, they will never, ever tell you who their owner contact is. That's just part of the big Chinese firewall that they have. They will never tell you who their owner contact is. Again, that can be one of the components that might be frustrating for people, but just do your best to be patient and work through the third-party company, and they will, on their end, work through the owner to get the information that you need. So again, fatalities and citations are a huge deal, but there are something you can work around with them. Insurance certificates almost fall in the same realm. Your insurance certificate has to meet the criteria in the third-party qualification company's database exactly. If it does not match exactly, you will fail instantly. That's a red flag. And you have to work with your insurance broker to get that rectified and get it uploaded into the system and reviewed, and so that you can get a proper grade. So back to insurance certificates, when they expire, again, your score will turn to failing instantly if you don't have a current certificate of insurance. So make sure that it matches exactly what it says in ISNet World. Make the certificate work with it. If you have a contract with an owner that's different than the requirements that ISNet World or whatever company is requiring, you need to work with that third-party company to say, here's what my contract says. This is what I must comply with. That contract is higher ranking than what the requirements of these third-party databases are. So be careful there as well. Next, please. So here are some do's and don'ts that I threw up here on the screen. So do's, make sure if you're going to sign up for one of these companies that you assign a qualified company person or hire a qualified firm to, input this information into the system, to stay on top of it, to maintain it. This is not a one and done thing. This information has to be continually maintained. And it does take some time for the person to initially get all this information uploaded into the system so that you can get qualified. So again, don't just throw it off onto Bill or Sue, who, does HR most of the time, and they got 1 or 2 hours a week to do this. That just isn't enough in the beginning. Maybe down the road, once you got everything all set up, maintenance-wise, 1 to 2 hours a week might be sufficient, but not in the beginning. So be careful with who you assign it to. If you do hire a qualified firm, please do all of your homework. Figure out who they are, how long they've been doing this. Make sure you understand what their fee structure is. There's a lot of companies out there that do this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the don't side of the house, but just make sure you do your research. Next, make sure that you keep up with these pre-qual requirements. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but some of these owners in these systems have monthly reporting requirements, like they want to know what your hours are on their project site. There are definitely quarterly requirements where you have to submit, OSHA metrics and things, and there's definitely annual requirements, insurance certificates, again, more metrics. And so you have to make sure you keep up with all of them and schedule the time to do so. Next, make sure you read and respond to notices that are sent to you by these systems, whether it's in the system internally itself, where the people who are administering it can see it on your side of the house, or you get emails. You have to stay on top of this. Owners can see what contractors open notices and which ones don't. And some of these owners put messages through these systems that requires action on your behalf, like you have to sign a statement to something or attest to something. So make sure you respond, read and respond to all of those notices. And lastly, please make sure you're patient. And I know that's a lot to ask for in this, because I know I've been there a million times. I feel your pain. I mean, this stuff will drive you batshit crazy. But please, please be patient. The more frustrated you get, the worse the situation is going to get. So stay patient. It will all pay off in the end. On the don't side of the house, don't think you can do this overnight. Don't think you can get signed up and be done within a week. It's not going to happen. I would say, you know, if you assign somebody to this and they spent a good amount of time on it, to get everything in there and all set up, it's going to take a good, probably couple weeks. You know, if you have to go in there and submit a certificate of insurance again, at a minimum, it usually takes 3 days for the third-party database companies to review them and either, you know, approve or reject that insurance certificate. Same thing applies to procedures. So again, don't be going into, oh, I'm going to go meet with this client and we're going to be approved tomorrow because, you know, Bill and Sue are working on it and they'll take care of it. That's not always the case. You have to wait for the third-party database company to process the info on their end. This is a unique don't. And this, again, this is all based on my experience and personal opinion. Do not connect with owners that you're not currently working for or you don't intend to work for in the immediate future. Because what happens is when you do that, it adds up a whole new set of requirements for you in ISNet world. It could be the monthly reporting. It could be a certain procedure that the owner wants to see. So again, don't connect with owners you don't currently work for or won't be working for in the immediate future. And I learned this on our end because, you know, we had over 150 owners that we had to do, you know, account maintenance on in our databases. And that was actually just in ISNet world alone. So at some point in time, we had to say, are we working for all these owners, and had to really do our homework. And we had to figure out we were not working for some of the owners. And so we had to disconnect from them in the systems. But the minute that we were going to work for them again, we would reconnect with them. I know a lot of the database companies would stay connected. Maybe some of the owners would stay connected. But on your end, it does result in potentially a lot more work. Another big no-no, whatever you do, do not upload policies and procedures into these systems that are not what you currently use in your company, okay? And what I mean by that is there are companies that go out and they'll find online a company that will give you ISNet World approved procedures. And you know, they'll whip those right out for you and you pay a nice fee for those, and then you submit those into ISNet World. Whatever you submit into ISNet World or whatever third-party database company, you better be using those procedures in the field, okay? I had an owner, an oil company, contact me one time and said, Cece, can you do some work for us? Can you go out and compare what 3 of our contractors have versus what they have in the field versus what they have in ISNet World? And so I went out with this owner to 3 of their contractors. Well, not quite 3. We went to the first contractor, and we knew what they had in ISNet World, and we looked at what they had in place in the field, in their office, and guess what? It didn't match up. It wasn't the same set of procedures. It wasn't the same safety manual that was in ISNet World. And so I told the owner, I said, I don't want to charge you more money. I can almost guess what's going to happen with the next 2. And he said, oh no, let's just go ahead. And so we did another one. Same thing. It wasn't what was in ISNet World. And at that point, the owner said, we're not going to do the 3rd one. So please, owners will be looking, or they'll have contractors on their behalf looking to see if you have these policies and procedures in place in the field. So make sure you have them in place.
CC, before we move on, we've
Yes.
got a question, and it goes, actually I have 2. The first one comes from Kathleen. You made the statement, don't connect with owners you don't work for. She asked, what about the owners who put you into their system?
Oh, that's a really good question, Kathleen. Owners that put you into their system. And Kathleen, I don't know what system you're referring to specifically, but if it is something like ISNet World, it's not my experience that owners typically assign you. Actually, I have had that happen. Owners have wanted to connect. They call it connect in ISNet World. And that's great. And you can connect if you're going to be doing work for them. But if you're not doing work for them, or there's not a really good reason to stay connected with them, I would not connect. I hope that makes sense, Kathleen.
Yeah, it looks like she said it was ISN that it reached
Yeah,
out to
and
her.
some owners do that. And by the way, what happens on the owner side of the house, the people that are running this on the owner side of the house are usually procurement folks. And they don't have any idea who you are or what you're doing or what you're going to be doing, usually with the owner. So I would be cautious with the, why certain owners are wanting to connect. If they know they've got a big bid coming up and they want you to bid on it, absolutely connect with them and make it happen. But otherwise, if it's just some random connection request out of thin air, I would be cautious with it. And reach out to IS Networld and say, why is this owner trying to connect with me? Can you please find out?
Great. Our other question was, and it's not in the box anymore, but basically dealt with the waiver of subrogation that many owners are asking contractors for. And as a contractor, you really don't want to do that, give that waiver of subrogation. I'm seeing them all the time now. So any thoughts there, what you're seeing in the waiver of subrogation world, and are there any ways to get around that requirement or work around it?
Yeah, good question. Yes, that's always been a sticking point. And I'm going to say right now, I'm not an expert in anything, but I'm definitely not an insurance guru. I know enough to be dangerous. I would say whatever your contract says, if the contract says you have to have a waiver of subrogation, then you have to do it. If it doesn't say that, then I think there's room to negotiate with the owner via IS Networld or whatever company to try and get out of that if you can. Unfortunately, waivers of subrogation have become much more common and are part of the necessary evil sometimes. And Pete,
All right.
I don't know if you can, from your standpoint, add anything to that, but please do if you.
No, I would agree. I mean, we're seeing it, it's pretty much become standard language. Back 5-6 years ago when it first started, we would scratch it out, but now it's simply become something that's required, and we've kind of learned to work within the system. But it is something we wish wasn't there, but we're seeing it all the time. So
Thanks, Pete. Yep, it's kind of like these third-party qualification companies. Some of us wish it weren't there, but it's just something we have to do. So the next don't that I have is don't overstate the type of work you do. Boy, this was a hard lesson that we learned back in the day. Because we were such a large contractor, we did so many different types of things. We would go into IS Networld and it would say, identify what they call it work types, type of work, same thing. And we would go down there and go, yep, we do that, we do that, we do that. I mean, the whole list. And then what we didn't realize is that on the back end, that triggers you to have to basically enter some type of procedure for each one of those work types. So one of them was something crazy like, we operate vacuum trucks. Whoa, we don't operate vacuum trucks. We hire contractors, subcontractors to operate vacuum trucks, but we personally don't do it. So whatever you do, don't overstate the type of work you do. Only state the type of work that you currently do in IS Networld. Otherwise, it's going to cause you more problems down the road and a lot of frustrations. You'd be like, why are they asking me for a procedure on vacuum trucks? Well, you might have checked a box somewhere that led them to believe that that's the type of work that you do. So be careful there. Don't overstate. And then last but not least, don't get frustrated or learn the hard way by making serious mistakes. I know it's easy to say don't get frustrated, but honestly, like I said earlier, the more frustrated you get with this, the worse it gets. So try and stay positive. Walk away from it if you have to. Take a deep breath, but don't make any of these serious mistakes. And remember, there's always a way to work within the system. I'm not saying work around the system. Work within the system to make it work for you as the contractor. Don't just simply throw your hands up in the air and go, we're never going to get pre-qualified and walk away. There's always a fix somewhere. You just have to take the time, be creative, and figure it out. Next, please. So with that, we have a few more minutes. I'm happy to take any more questions that are out there. I figured we'd have a ton of questions just based on this topic and the feedback that Wayne and the team have gotten on the survey. So feel free. If you have any questions, let us know.
I'll pose a question, kind of get a little dialogue started here. So I've had some experience with trying to qualify for large corporate owners
Mhm.
that there are people in the field, there are safety people, there are people on site, basically begging to get us in there. You go on, you begin to fill out these systems, and I can't tell you, we didn't use a third party. We were really kind of working on our own, and it just ran in one brick wall into another until we finally just kind of gave up and walked away. And it always left me wondering, wait a minute, they want us there, their people want us there, but their system was just impossible to work in. So is it getting to where you really should have this third party representing you? Is that really what ISNet World and those, are they on our side or are they on the owner's side? Or what's their role in the process?
I hope members of the IS Networld team are not on the phone. No, whose side are they on? I'll tell you the truth, they're on their side. They collect fees from the owners and they collect fees from the contractors. So, yeah, they're there to service you. You pay a fee, and same thing with the owners. They pay a fee. I don't know. You guys can do this yourselves. You are more than qualified to go in there and enter the data and do it yourselves. And I encourage you to do it. I encourage you to do it because, one, you need to know, what are these owners requiring? What are these company third parties making us do, so that you can talk to owners intelligently about it. And also, once, if you do decide to hire a third party, you still have to be engaged and stay on top of it, making sure that what they enter into the system is truthful and that is what you're implementing in the field. You just have to stay on top of it. And in my experience, there are times that some owners, I said in the very beginning, this is to meet regulatory requirements. It's to make sure that your procedures meet regulatory requirements. And it's also to make sure that you meet internal, owner requirements as well. I remember one day that there was an owner that required, through ISNet World, a behavior-based safety procedure. And thankfully we had that program in place. We'd had it in place, but they required this specific owner wanted annual behavior-based safety training. And, our company's 95,000 people. And so am I going to write in a procedure for the company that every employee is going to have behavior-based safety training annually? The answer is no. Could I have written that in the procedure and made it get approved by ISNet World? Yeah, but it wasn't the truth. So you have to be truthful. We had to say no on that. And we never got a complete, I think we got a B on that procedure just because we would not lie. And there's no way we were going to train 95,000 people every year on BBS. That's the cost-wise is astronomical. So, sorry, a little tangent there. Any other questions, Pete?
No, we've got several more popped in, but I'm going to roll on with one from myself. I know Impact had the golf coach initiative they had launched and worked with for quite a few years, and ran into some difficulties of different types. If I were a business manager, so I'm looking at it from the union side, and I have a refinery in my local that for years has had all non-union labor in it, and I really want to get one of my union contractors in the door, what's the best way or third-party service that maybe is going to help them get traction coming that way? Because as we know, many of these industrial sites, especially in the southeast, basically take a non-union or anti-union stance. So do you have any recommendations for the business managers out there that might be on?
Yeah, Pete, that's a really good question. And to be truthful, in my experience, these third-party database companies don't distinguish between, union versus non-union. And so it's hard for them to, make different requirements or promote it a different way. Honestly, it all gets down to, just like everything in business, you have to build relationships with that local refinery. Figure out, who's the management in there, how go in and sell, how, your organization and how union is, can help them, how you can do jobs safer, how you can do jobs better. It gets down to that relationship building, Pete, if that makes any sense. The third party database is not a silver bullet to fix that.
Sure, as we found out. So Kathleen just kind of backed up what you had said about having one person rather than a group kind of representing you doing the work.
Yeah.
Another person just thanked you for your breath of fresh air in an arena where people talk fuzzy, so which is some truth. Kevin Hildebrand had asked in the chat, and I thought it was a good question. He asked if we could discuss a bit more about the options of purchasing a safety policy system that have the key words that third-party organizations are looking for. So what are those? Are there key words that they're reaching and looking for?
Yeah, no, yeah, Kevin is absolutely right. So they do have, you can go out, Google, ISNet approved procedures. There are consultants out there that will give you procedures. Of course, you have to pay the fee that will meet all the requirements that ISNet World is requiring for each additional topic. So, what happens is it gets back to the work types. You select what work types you do. So, for example, you say you do scaffolding, then it's going to ask you to produce a procedure for scaffolding. And then you have to go in the third-party database company website, and it will ask you anywhere between 5 and 10 questions. Does your procedure say X, Y, and Z? And you have to look through there, figure out where it says that, and you have to say yes, and then you have to put the page and the section number and the paragraph that says exactly what the answer to that question is. And so if you have a procedure right now that doesn't say that, I would encourage you to revise it. If you don't have any procedures and you don't know where to go, or you don't want to spend the time, yeah, it is an option to go out and buy these procedures. You get them customized for your company. Make sure you can comply with everything in that procedure. So you've got to put the due diligence in there, make sure you comply, and then you have to roll it out to all of your employees and be using it in the field. So there's some pros and cons to that, Kevin. You just have to figure out what is the best way for you to do it as for your company.
All right, we had an anonymous ask, if you're a general contractor, do you need to have policies or procedures in the system that would cover safety requirements, even if you use a subcontractor or for your subcontractor? Basically, are they going to be filling out for their subs?
Oh, great question, anonymous. Back to my statement about my lesson learned on operating vacuum trucks. No, you only state the type of work that you personally do, not what your contractors do, only what you as a company do. From there, what'll happen is these big owners will require you to pre-qualify your subcontractors. And how you go about doing that is usually up to you. Usually the owner will let you figure out how to pre-qualify your own contractors. So they don't have to be members of ISNet World necessarily, or whatever company the owner's requiring. I hope that answered the question, anonymous.
I think so. So we have, next question up is from Mr. Jim Stanley, who is, he is a titan in our world. Thrilled that
The Jim Stanley.
Yeah, the Jim Stanley. So, so Jim asked if the owners or construction managers have different requirements for different types of contractors.
Good question, Jim. It's again, Jim, it's all based on work type. It's whatever you say the type of work is going to be in the system, and then that's what the questions are based off of. That's what the owner's questions are based off of. So it's based on what type of work you say you do.
All right. Another anonymous asked, do ISN or third-party companies use artificial intelligence for scanning upload documents for keywords like many resume scanning software do these days?
Oh, that's a really good question. I have no idea. I do know they employ a lot of people at these companies, and so they may be using some software to go through some of it. But in the end, there's a person that has to review and check the box that the procedure, yes, meets all the requirements, yes or no. So I'm sorry, I can't say for sure if they use AI in it, but there is a person at the end that checks the box.
All right, the last one we have, at least at this point in time, Kathleen simply adds, as you develop programs to submit, don't forget that they are looking for formatting also. So I'm not sure, maybe you want to expound on that a little bit?
I honestly am sorry, Pete and Kathleen. I can't expound on that. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not familiar. I've never had an experience in formatting, but sorry, I couldn't be more helpful there.
Hey, Pete,
Yes.
it's Bill. We're really getting crunched here, and CC, we can listen to you all
I
day.
know.
And we're learning an awful lot, but I think we're going to have to,
Agreed.
we're supposed to be starting the next part in 7 minutes. We're not going to.
Yep. We knew that. So I'm watching the clock, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm getting some nudges here. So.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Brown. Yeah, we're actually a few minutes over. So, all right, Pete, I'm going to exit. And if there are any more questions, if you guys have questions later, just, enter them in the Q&A and we can do our best to get you answers. And so thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being with us, and really appreciated all the information, and hopefully a lot of people can take this and go out and get pre-qualified. So with that, we're going to turn it over to, I believe, Mr. Steve Rank or maybe Mr. Brown, but thanks again, everyone.
No, it's going to Steve Rank. It's going to Steve.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. If you could unmute my video for a second. Here are the topics that we covered through our district council safety hours since the COVID-19 breakout. We needed a way to communicate with our contractors and local unions. Prior to February, we had district council safety summits set up for Canada and the United States. But unfortunately, we had to change the whole safety department agenda for the rest of the year. So this was a way for us to reach out and bridge the gap on safety issues happening in our contractors' backyard, our local union backyard. And these are the ones that we've had here just shortly. So just review this briefly, and you will see that we've worked very hard to find out what's going on in your backyard. I know next year we have several planned coming up. Jeff Norris has one coming up in January, but it's our way to communicate with you folks and to handle any safety or health issues on a proactive instead of a reactive standpoint. So that's what we want to do. So it's been very successful. There's a lot of follow-up after each one of these to-dos, letters, calls, documents, sample programs that people need. But it's been very, very helpful. So that is part of our tactic this year, our strategy. So look forward to you participating in our district council safety hour calls next year. Next slide, please. Now we're moving on to Dwayne is going to give us a brief update on the COVID-19 initiatives that affected our members and our contractors, and it has been a moving target since our very first webinar with Dr. John Howard. What he said then, he's completely changed his PowerPoint to address new issues. So we've also had to address new issues that are constantly changing on this. So I want to turn over to Wayne to give us a quick overview on what we've been doing to manage this.
Hey, all right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Terrific, thank you, Steve. Yeah, well, Steve mentioned a moving target. That's kind of what I'm dealing with here is if you're trying to see me on your screen, I had a nice spot here, and then as the sun has come around, that moving target has caused a little bit of washout here on my screen. So I apologize for that. But one of the things that we did with when coronavirus first hit and started impacting us in the construction industry, especially with the essential workforce, is that we put together a coronavirus or a COVID-19 reporting form. We send this out weekly to our international as well as through our contractors through Impact, requesting information. It's simply for internal purposes only, so we can get a little bit of an idea of where we're at and how that's impacting our members and our industry. Next slide. So that form is what we use, and so we put together, as a result of utilizing that form and the responses that we've received, we've put together this COVID map. So right now we have 275 reported cases in the United States and Canada, 250 in the US, 25 in Canada. And what we've tried to do is mark the status of those cases as to whether or not they were positive, negative, recovered, self-quarantined, or any fatalities. You'll notice that we unfortunately have had 9 fatalities, 6 actives, 3 retirees. Those are marked with a black ribbon on the map. And then those that are self-quarantined or a positive test, and we don't have results as whether or not they received a negative test or out of self-quarantine, we put either as a red marker, or if they're just simply identified to us as in self-quarantine and we didn't know, we identify those with a yellow marker. And then if they've been recovered or had a negative test, we identify those with a green marker. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense here in what we put together on our map. And then if you can go to the next slide, if you just take a look at the picture of what we just shared with you, and if you look and overlay that to the actual COVID map of the entire United States. Now this one came from Johns Hopkins from their cases, and we're over in the United States over 14 million, probably by today we'll be over 15 million cases in the United States, 282,797 deaths, and over 5.5 million recovered. And if you looked at our COVID map that we put together, and you look at the United States overall COVID map, it's kind of a small population or a sampling of what we're seeing in the larger population. So, the high population areas, East Coast, West Coast, and we're starting to see those trickles up there in Wisconsin and even in some spots up in Ontario, where we're starting to see more cases popping up. And it's kind of what we're seeing with the Ironworkers is also what we've seen nationally and internationally with the US and Canada as well. Next slide. And so as far as Canada goes, this is the most recent Canadian COVID map. There are 415,182 overall cases in Canada. And of note is that Alberta has just recently imposed some new coronavirus restrictions for the province of Alberta. So that's changing things because they've had a severe uptick as well. So again, we're starting to see more government interaction here, or more involvement as far as different restrictions taking place as we're starting to see more cases increase. Next slide, please. So one of the other things that we've done as far as COVID is that we put together a resource or a response kit, which has all sorts of programs, checklists, guidelines, different training, things that talk about face coverings and masks. Those are all in a Dropbox folder. And so with this PowerPoint, we have that linked. We also have links to CDC and OSHA guidance, as well as the CPWR in working with the North American Building Trades Unions put together a create your own COVID-19 plan. And that is available, so we put a link into that. So it's something that I think the employers on the line, if they're looking to need to create a plan, they can go in there, answer some questions, and it'll generate a plan that they can put into use right away. And they can customize it, which is pretty unique. Next slide, please. And so this is just another shot of our of the form. And again, we have links to that form in this PowerPoint presentation. So once we send the PowerPoint out to everybody, we will post a webinar today. We will send this PowerPoint out, and you can utilize those links to get to all that information that we're sharing with you today. One slide that I did not include in here that I do want to mention is the coronavirus has also had a significant impact on mental health for everyone, not just in the industry, but for everyone in general, that there's been a significant emphasis placed on mental health. And I know our Ironworkers Chief of Staff, Kevin Burns, has been working very closely with some folks to help address the mental health issues. And there's actually a page on the Impact website that addresses mental health, opioid, and suicide prevention. So I would encourage you, if you're on here, to take a look at that. It's under the Safety tab on the Impact website. And with that, I believe that concludes my remarks on COVID, and I will turn it back over to Steve or Bill Brown or Bill Dean to introduce Jeff Norris. Thank you.
Jeff Norris, please.
Good morning, everyone. good afternoon to most of you across Canada and the United States. Can you hear and see me okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So in regards to report on Canada in this new realm of business environment that we're facing, face-to-face meetings, travel, conferences are on a hold pattern. Webinars are proving to be a method of engaging participants in thought-provoking discussion and learning opportunities. Our first Canadian Ironworker Call to Safety webinar was held July 22nd this year. Mark your calendars for our next event, planned for January 13th, 2021. This webinar will be a continuation, provide a forum for Canadian ironworker leaders to have a real-time conversation about safety and health in the ironworking industry specific to Canada. Next slide, please. As Steve mentioned, the District Council Safety Hour program allows open discussion and sharing of topics that are relevant and important to a specific area in specific parts of the ironworker industry. Since our last roundtable, we've held 3 events where each have identified a list of common issues. Although as important, we've also identified matters that are unique to the region. Not only does it bring light to specific issues, but also on how to solve problems. So this collective effort where the union, the members, our local unions, and our department working together to improve safety performance. So to give you a couple of examples as a result of our Lunch and Learn program, on October 8th, Colin Daniels, District Council Western Canada President, we held a event specific to shops. Immediately after that Lunch and Learn, we were contacted by a signatory contractor requesting the opportunity to participate in the 3M Ironworker PAPR program. On October the 14th, District Council President Jimmy Buson for Eastern Canada held an event for Nova Scotia. Again, the PAPR program was a topic of interest. We were also made aware that Nova Scotia had developed a code, a practice years ago for the steel erector. And that presents an opportunity for us to update that legislation, update the changes in that province that reflect accepted industry best practices. And Eric Dean mentioned in his opening comments that the topic of fall protection is something that we're still dealing with in 2020, going into 2021. And through this webinar series, we've been made aware that leading edge SRDs have been a significant issue. So we need to collectively advocate for these products, be trained, and to use this equipment correctly. So we looked at the changes to the CSA standards and how to implement that standard into our training programs. Also, interestingly, specific to the reinforcing steel industry, we were brought to be aware that there's no specific regulation in Nova Scotia defining who has custody of impalement protection. So using the most current standards that Steve's going to mention here right away, it's 2 state-approved OSHA plans, California and Washington. We can use those standards to develop language for Canada. On October 24th, Kevin Branton, District Council President for Ontario, hosted an event. And we found that there's a real connection, importance of participating in our labor management associations and our direct connection to safety associations. So having that representation at the highest level and right through to the regional level is really important. As Wayne mentioned, mental health issues have been brought up, and it's a relevant discussion related to safety and health. And representatives from Local 765 Ottawa recently participated in a mental health first aid program. So information from that program tells us that 1 in 5 people are experiencing mental health issues across Canada each year. And over 500,000 people have taken that training. So this is an opportunity for us to explore training opportunities related to mental health. Next week, we actually are hosting another Lunch and Learn. Colin Daniels will be hosting in Saskatchewan. And To summarize, we also have an opportunity for Bert Royer, our Canadian Director of Impact, to join our calls, provide information regarding programs and services that may assist contractors and local unions relating to these types of issues. And every one of these sessions is also looked at how apprenticeship and training programming and exploring the ways that training centers can be used as a resource. So this program is really proving to be quite valuable at this time. With that, I'll turn it back to Steve Rank. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We're really pleased to have Jeff as a full-time Canadian safety coordinator throughout Canada. He has a huge job. Every province is different across Canada. They all have their own health and safety regulations and a different protocol for pursuing them. But we're really pleased that Jeff knows the lay of the land with the help of Colin, with the help of everyone else across Canada, with Kevin. And so he's going to address a lot of issues across Canada to help our contractors and help our members. So thanks for all you do, Jeff, and thank you to Wayne for his great assistance on all the slides and efforts that you've seen prior to this one coming up here. As General President Dean said earlier, one of the big initiatives coming that we're going to launch this year, hopefully October, is the Ironworker Supervisor Safety Certification Program. All right. And why is that important? It's important because our foremen, who are considered to be company management representatives by the Department of Labor and the National Labor Relations Board, play a very specific role. The problem is they've never understood their roles and responsibilities. And Pete hosted, with Pete, we hosted a specific international call earlier this year dealing with the roles and responsibilities of supervisors in the workplace. Okay, so what we're doing is we're on track to get our program, our foreman supervisor program, accredited by the International Accreditation Services, who works throughout the world. And they are giving us a competency-based certification to any member that wants to pursue this, or a contractor that wants their foreman or supervisors to take this. Next slide, please. So the real question is when are you considered to be a supervisor and a company management representative? Well, as OSHA and the National Labor Relations Board, they've determined over about 30 years what constitutes in a court of law whether he or she is acting as a company management representative. Next slide, please. Our certification program is going to have a section that deals specifically with these definitions and terms, because if your foreman working for you today, if you're a contractor in the audience today, if they do one out of these 11 or 12 items here, they are considered to be a company management representative, not an iron worker out of Local 433 or Local 1 Chicago or Local 63. They are considered to be a company management representative. So when we have these unfortunate catastrophic events, the first thing they ask is, who's your supervisor? Where is he or she? I need to talk to them. And they're going to determine whether they had actual knowledge, constructive knowledge, imputed knowledge. They're going to find out if they were qualified, competent. They're going to find out if they had direct responsibility, apparent authority, independent judgment. And so these things come up. And it's only fair to our foremen, who we want to assume more responsibility as being qualified foremen in the workplace. They have to be told what the rules of engagement are. And this certification will meet that box, check that box. So those are things that are just part of this certification program that we're going to roll out later this year. So we appreciate General President Dean mentioning this as a primary initiative of the Safety and Health Department, and also all of the Labor and Management Co-Chair, General President Dean and Bill Brown support for giving us the resources through Impact to make this happen. So thank you for your support, and we're going to make this and roll this out this year. Next slide, please. Update on reinforcing and post-tensioning standards. General President Dean made mention to this. Not many people realize this, but I think over 55% of our work hours come from reinforcing and post-tensioning. But the problem has been there's not been safety standards that address walls, columns, decks, impalement, access to the work site, hoisting and rigging of reinforcing assemblies, okay? Or of course, post-tensioning. The federal OSHA standards have not been touched since 1971 when they were written. And they're antiquated and they needed updating. So with the help of all of our labor and management folks around the country, including Fred Cotting with NARS, who was very helpful, we now have national Ansi standards since 2013. We have 2 state OSHA plans. We have California and the state of Washington that adopted our standards word for word. Everything that we wanted on site conditions, custody of impalement covers, walls, columns, decks to be inspected by the people that set the formwork, not us. All that stuff is in place. So as General President Dean mentioned, with the new current administration, we are anticipating to have another chance to get federal OSHA to take the lead on updating their 1971 standard and adopting what we've already seen is working today. So I want to thank Fred, all the other reinforcing stakeholders that worked with the Ironworkers and Impact to make this happen. And so this year we're going to see a lot of activity in this. Any questions, Pete, on this particular issue or the previous one?
Hey, Steve.
Yes, yes.
This is Steve. This is Wayne. Just one question, if you could go back to the safety supervisor course that we're working on.
Yes.
There's a question that came in from Joan Sabatka about will there be a fee for the supervisor certification? Can you address that, the fee structure?
Gladly. The cost is zero. This is a service to our members and to our contractors who need a certification that he or she is competent and has completed a course that makes them identify common hazards in the workplace. So the answer is the cost is free. All we need is participation by our members and our contractors to do this, okay? This is going to be Ironworker specific. It's going to address hazards from the time the trucks show up to the job of offloading iron, to shaking iron, to raising gang, erecting structural steel, to decking, to guying, miscellaneous iron, and getting off the job from A to Z. We're going to detail common hazards that our supervisors need to know. So the cost is zero, Wayne. Thanks. Any other questions?
Thank you. Actually, Steve, there's a couple more that just came in. So Joan I answered, she says, thank you again for this on the safety certification. And there's another question that came in regarding the competent person. So this is from Eric. He wants to clarify, can we utilize foreman as the competent person to meet compliance with COVID-19 policies as they are concerning on-site situational needs as a substitute for, say, the safety director?
Well,
can you address that?
Okay.
Foreman is a competent person in lieu of the safety director.
Anyone can be a competent person as long as two things that happen, right? You as an employer, Eric, I think that was your name, that you have assigned and directed your employee to be a competent person. So the real question on you, Eric, have you adequately communicated the roles and responsibilities under COVID-19 restrictions on a job site? Are they competent? Do they have the knowledge, the experience, and the authority to address the COVID-19 issues that's being required on that project? Yes or no? If I asked your foreman 4 questions and they couldn't answer them, I would say no. They're not a competent person. And you need to go back to the drawing board and make sure they are. So just like wire rope slings or fall protection or anything else, Your designated competent people have to know the answers to the work that they're doing. And in the world of COVID-19, I know they're putting a lot of responsibility on our first line foremen, or quote, safety people or designated competent people to meet the project requirements. So focus in on that, sir. Direct your attention to your foreman. And that's the best advice I can give.
Well, Steve, I'm going to go a little out of order here on the questions that have come in, because this one goes back to the safety supervisor again.
Okay.
An anonymous attendee asked, will this supervisor certification be required for members that get dispatched from their respective halls as foremen?
The answer is no. It's not. It's going to be an elective course that I know Lee Worley is on here, and we're going to tee this course up to make it online with the approval of the International Accreditation Services, who couldn't be with us today, by the way. And you can go online and study for this. So all of our foremen, we're going to encourage all of our members to get this, and then they can put it on the apprenticeship tracking system on their card through the National Training Fund and through the coordinators throughout the United States and Canada, North America. So the answer is no, it's not going to be a requirement. Okay, we're gonna slow walk this. We want our employers to engage this. We want our employers to direct their foremen to take this course, and we certainly want to encourage our members to come in and take it. Project requirements are requiring supervisor certification. The question is this: are these certifications adequately identifying the hazards in the workplace? Many of them don't. They're so generic, you don't know if you're an ironworker, a carpenter, or a bricklayer. They are so generic, they are not meeting the intended requirements. But rest assured, this course will, with the help of Wayne, with Jeff, with other folks that we want to pull into this. It's going to be good. Any other questions?
Yep, I've got some more for you, Steve. So staying on the same subject as the supervisor certification, is there an incentive for members to take the supervisor course, like a stipend or anything?
No, you're not going to be paid extra for working safe, okay? You're going to be paid to work safe as a union ironworker coming through the apprenticeship to be a journeyman ironworker. Guess what? It's all going to pay the same. You're not going to be paid a stipend to work safe. We want our workers to work safe. You heard General President Dean say one of the biggest problems that we saw were all the photographs coming in for the convention, half of which we couldn't use because of what? Fall protection issues, gross violations, misuse of horizontal lifelines, retractable lanyards. So we got a lot of work to do, and we got the support from our general officers and impact to do it. So the answer to that one is no, you're not going to get paid for working safe. You're expected to work safe.
Great, thank you, Steve. One more that came in related to the credential. What are you looking at in terms of continuing education requirements for this credential?
We're not going to get into stipends or CEUs. I know there's a lot of people have asked that because every year they have to drum up some CEUs to keep some other safety certification going. Our main motive here is to make damn sure that our foremen understand their roles and responsibilities as supervisors in their workplace, and they have been tested, trained, they've studied, they've got a certification because they passed the course. That's what our goal is to stop some of these things, these incident trends that we see because they didn't know their roles and responsibilities. And you know, Wayne, as well as anybody, we have hundreds of cases that the common thread in these is the supervisor's inaction or ignorance on their roles and responsibilities, or their failure to follow the company policies and procedures, or even OSHA issues. So that's the primary focus of this course. And no, we're not going to give out any CEUs at this time.
Okay, thank you. One more, this shifting gears a little bit, Steve. This is on the current slide that's up on the reinforcing and post-tensioning. An anonymous attendee wants to know, where can we find the updated post-tensioning state standards for the Washington state, for Washington Labor and Industry?
I think we have those posted on our websites. If not, they'll be posted. If not, you can Google Washington labor in the industry and new reinforcing standards under a concrete masonry standard. It'll pop up. So we have Ansi standards, California and Washington. If they'll get a hold of the safety department, you'll see our name on the end slide. Contact us. We'll get them to you.
Terrific. Steve and I have one more question that's come in, and this may be more of a roundtable discussion, but I'm going to throw it out there now. Another attendee asks, contractors are facing a moving and changing COVID compliance target almost daily. They're dealing with mandatory requirements from OSHA, NIOSH, CDC, state health departments, local health departments, cities, counties, and much more. Do the ironworker contractors follow all, some, or none, and follow common sense guidelines that work for companies and their workers, which make the employees as safe as possible? So I'll leave that open.
That's a huge question. You always have to follow what's in the contract document, okay? If they want you to wear a face mask underneath a full face shield and it's in the contract and you signed it, guess what? You're going to have to do it, all right? But I'm also a common sense person. If I'm out tying rebar and I'm in the middle of a bridge deck and no one's around me, why do I have to wear a face covering, okay? So there has to be a mix in this. But number one is, if it's in the contract, we got to do it, Sir Wayne.
All right.
Maybe not the answer you want to hear, but that's my opinion.
Appreciate that, Steve. One last one here from Josh. Can you please repeat the date for the Supervisor Safety Training course?
I hate to do that because you're going to hold me to it.
I know we said October. October 2021.
Roll this out in October. At the end of the year, it'll be online. We're going to do some test things, some pilot programs once we get it in place. We're going to work with some contractors to get their folks to take it online and study for it. We don't want it to be difficult. We want to hit the nail right on the head. Floor openings, impalement, rigging, fall protection, getting into the power lines, etc. Okay? It's not going to be difficult, but it's going to be thorough. So look at October 1st. Hold me to it.
All right, Steve. And also on that same subject line, what about in Spanish or any other language?
Well, I'll have to ask Lee how he does that through the National Training Fund. So I need to cut the questions off, but I would have to defer on Lee on how he does all his great training programs, how they communicate, if they have Spanish versions and all that. We will accommodate our members the best we can. I don't have the answer to that.
Very good. That's all the questions that have come in so far, Steve. Thank you.
Well, that's all I'm going to answer too. Next slide, please. And here we go. I want to turn this over to Wayne and Jeff very quickly to talk about what we're doing on the air sampling, the PAPRs, and hit that real quick if they could, please.
Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So the voluntary air sampling program is part of the 2020 Zero Incident Campaign commissioned by General President Eric Dean, focused on identifying and preventing health hazards. The Impact Board of Trustees approved funding for the Safety and Health Department to establish a voluntary industrial hygiene air sampling program for signatory shop and field contractors. The voluntary outreach program is designed to provide professional industrial hygiene services to help evaluate harmful exposures to welding fumes, metals, paints, solvents, and other chemical compounds that become airborne during common shop and field operations. The Safety and Health Department utilized the expertise of an independent industrial hygienist to work with contractors and members in accordance with their air sampling program. So air sampling testing has been provided in fabrication shops to monitor fumes, silica, and other airborne contaminants. For more information, Steve will outline the contact information at the end of this webinar. Next slide, please. So the use of respiratory protection, an important component of personal protective equipment, is dependent on the hazard and the environmental conditions in the workplace. This requires the employer and the worker to be knowledgeable about potential exposures and their respective protective measures and controls. However, The use of respirators is inconsistent in workplace settings, potentially putting workers at risk for illness or injury. And to better understand the use of RPE, the barriers, the influences, the Ironworkers International is providing an opportunity to self-examine self-reported use of respirators. And we're testing an advanced respiratory protection system known as a powered air purifying respirator, or otherwise known as a PAPR. The Ironworker PAPR program launch for North America occurred on November 17th in partnership with Supreme Steel, 3M Canada, and Ironworkers Local 805. The Supreme Steel is one of the Canada's largest steel solution providers based near Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and are affiliated with 7 local unions. The facility has 106,000 square feet of production space with a weekly throughput rate of over 500 metric tons of structural steel using the latest in fabrication and welding technology. With the opportunity resulting from our Lunch and Learn program, we were able to quickly put a pilot program together. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Ken Bird, Director of Fabrication, and Cherie Stregler, OHS Advisor with Supreme Steel, as well as Dave Senyo, Vice President of Operations. Also want to thank our Local 805 leadership, Bill Mercer and Kook Law, for their role in this launch. Next slide, please. So just a couple of photographs. This is the presentation and the training. Supreme Steel was able to select 5 welders from their team to participate in this pilot program. Next slide. I want to thank 3M Canada, their personal safety division, particularly Tina Bella, Program Manager, Stacy Blundell, Senior Health and Safety Application Specialist, and Angela Hercott, who did our presentation. She's a personal safety specialist with 3M. Next slide. So due to COVID restraints, we had to maintain physical separation, masking, etc. We were able to get through the training quite efficiently. Next slide. And put the PAPR program into place. So testing occurs for a minimum of 10 shifts, and then the PAPR is cleaned, disinfected, and necessary parts are replaced in order to issue to a new participant. So we've got Mark here, that's one of our testing participants. His comments are there for you to read. Again, this PowerPoint presentation will be shared afterward with some links and such. So, so far the program's been very successful. Again, it's just been a month. Next slide. We have Chase that's been also testing this, utilizing flux core primarily, and some grinding operations. He's, I believe today is his last day for this equipment, and then it will be passed on to another participant. So with that, Steve, Wayne, do you want to add anything?
Actually, yeah, Jeff, thank you. Great job. We have, so a couple of things here real quick. As Jeff pointed out, you know, this is something that we're doing as part of our industrial hygiene program. This is it's voluntary, and it's just trying to work with our employers as a pilot if they have an interest in checking this out. We're trying to be proactive in that as we look ahead to possible new regulations coming out of a new administration that might address welding fumes, it's possible that we could see those permissible exposure limits reduced to the current threshold limit values that are put out by the ACGIH, or the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists. If that happens, then the current methodologies of what we use may be challenged as far as our industrial hygiene goes, whether it's using the smoke eaters or using existing or personal protective equipment such as a half-face elastomeric respirator, as Jeff had mentioned. So what we're doing is we're trying to roll this out into a bit of a pilot, test it out, see how well it's received in the shop format, especially for production welders where they're utilizing this equipment day in and day out. And we're also trying to get some feedback from them on things that they like about it, things that they don't like about it, as well as, you know, has it helped for employers as far as, yes, there's an initial upfront cost, but maybe that might help save them on some of their legacy costs in replacement filters, or having to buy additional half-face filtering face piece respirators, even if it's a disposable type, hasn't helped with the quality and the production in the shop, because they're not changing things out from a welding hood to a face shield to be grinding. It's right there and it's all built in. So we think there definitely could be some benefit to this, and this is why we're trying to share this and get it out there. So Jeff, with that, we did have a comment come in from Eric Smith. He's mentioned that they've already been utilizing these products. Are their workers required to go through this program before they can use the PAPR? And do you want to answer that, or you want me to jump on that one?
Go ahead, Wayne.
So Eric, based in the question on that, no, you do not have to go through our program. We're just simply piloting this and try to get this into hands of more employers that are willing to try it. And Eric also has a couple of points in here about getting these things cleaned and sanitized. And that is something that we are also addressing as well in our program. Before we change these things out or change people in the pilot, these things are getting a thorough cleaning and sanitizing, as well as changing out some of the soft goods that are in those before they go on to the next person, especially because of all the current COVID concerns. So it is something that we are very aware of, and unfortunately there is a cost to this, and we are working through that and trying to help manage that the best that we can, but we want to try these things out and get them out there to as many people that are willing to try it, because we also want that feedback. There's a survey that we have for each individual member that we ask them. It's about 22 or 23 questions that we want to get back from them. And then we are also working on a survey for the employer to get some feedback from them on what they feel about the program, and to whether it might be something they might want to continue using down the road. So that's all I have, Jeff, if you have any additional comments.
Well, just to elaborate a little bit more on Eric's comment, PAPR technology is not new. It's been around for decades, but the technology is underutilized, specific in our industry. So it's primarily been used in healthcare for many years, and has been used in production facilities, again, for years and years. So it's just something that we have an opportunity to expand, especially around the knowledge and promote what's out there for technological solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And I know we also have other partners like Lincoln and Miller and Hobart that are also out there that utilize similar products. And I know when we've been talking to some of our folks about different types of PAPRs that they're like, well, yeah, we're not quite using the one that you're using, but we have one that's similar, and it's from Lincoln or Miller or one of our other partners. So we appreciate that, and we know that these units are being utilized out there on a greater scale.
Wayne, I have
Steve.
one quick comment, if I could, please. And that is if you folks would take the time to look at your safety data sheets and the hazard warning labels on your welding tins, on your consumables, whether it's rods or wire, you're going to see a number on there from the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists that sets that threshold limit value that Wayne mentioned at 0.20. Okay? So you have to recognize that that's the protection factor. So the question is are your welders in the shop or the field being exposed at levels over that number or a time-weighted average, whatever it is, okay? So look at those labels and know that we're trying to protect ironworker welders and help you comply with the manufacturer's warning signs, even though federal OSHA's permissible exposure limit is at the whole number of 5. It hasn't been touched since 1971, but those are minimum requirements. What we have to protect workers from are these hazards in accordance with the warning labels that are sent to us and sent to you. I just want to make that comment. Thanks.
And if I could, Steve, there are a couple additional comments from Erica that these units are worth their weight in gold and have already paid for themselves 3 times over. further to that, the worker really likes these units, and I can confirm that speaking with the individuals that have been using this product so far. They're well received. I know that we've got a Canadian contractor on the line today that they moved to PAPRs over 3 years ago and have experienced great success with these. So we just need to spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, we'll turn it back over to you.
Great. We're real pleased today to have Beth O'Quinn and Ken Goddard with us. And we've worked closely with the Specialized Gears and Rigging Association because we're on the end of that hook. And we appreciate everything that her organization and her members do with cranes to make it safer for us being on the end of that hook. So Beth, thanks for being with us. Ken, thanks for being with us. So give us an update.
Thanks, Steve, for letting us join you and listen and learn. Been an interesting year. Of course, I think we can all agree on that. But our members have membership has stayed strong, so our members are weathering the storm pretty good. We're certainly not on par with our membership increases last year, but we've got some very good numbers. So I want to also take this opportunity to thank everybody again and wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season. And with that, I'll turn it over to Beth.
Thanks, Ken. And thank you, Steve and Bill for again allowing us the opportunity to participate and give a brief quick update on what the association is doing. As Ken mentioned, our membership continues to remain strong. We're getting new members joining every week. We've been working on many safety training tools, some which apply to the ironworking industry, some which do not. So I'm going to briefly touch on the ones that do. So we have some safety training tools which will be available for download to our members that were similar to our previous safety talks, which once those are done, we will be converting those into online webinars and short videos that our members will be able to watch and then get confirmation that they've been trained in that. Another new thing that the association is doing this year is we have decided to implement a new rigger safety award. So that is something that originally we were going to unveil in 2022, but we've decided 2021 seems to be a good year to get it out. So we're finalizing the criteria on that, and it will include a minimum work hours of 10,000. The hours have to be with a member company, with 0 fatalities, 0 incidents, 0 workers' comp claims. And then we're also asking a question as to whether or not they've had a failure of a drug test. Originally, our thought was if they fail, then they're not eligible for the award. And previously, that had been kind of across the board for a crane operator award as well, that if you failed, then you were not eligible. However, with the current interest and focus on suicide prevention and opioids and everything else, our association has decided to take a different tactic on that. And so if the rigger fails the drug test within the year of the contest and possibly the next year, they'll be ineligible. But we also want to recognize the individuals who are trying to make a change and trying to get off the drugs and everything else. So we're not going to make that, a lifelong ban. It will be something that an individual can work toward and be able to be eligible for future years. So we're looking to get that unveiled pretty soon. And then the other thing I'd like to mention is in October, we received an invite from Kenny Waugh to tour the Local 5 new 55,000 square foot training facility over in Maryland. So as CNRA staff, there were 6 of us who were able to go over for the day for a couple hours and met with the business manager, and the apprentice coordinator and manager, and Lee Worley was also there. And I will say we were blown away by the facility itself. We were fortunate that there was a rigging class going on at the same time. So for some of our staff who've never seen it in action, it was great to be able to see that and to see exactly what it takes to be trained as an iron worker in rigging. So we appreciate that opportunity. We will take any local up on that offer anytime we can. So if anybody has any more opportunities, please let me know. So we just want to say thank you. Like I said, we're all working in the virtual world. We're all Zoomed to death, I think. So SCNRA is looking forward to getting back to live meetings next year. Our first meeting will be in June. So we're looking forward to that. And we look forward to seeing all of you again next year at the next event. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but like I said, just wanted to keep it short and sweet.
Beth,
Yes.
Bill Brown, what is your group, or how are you looking at the approach for the operators, especially when so many of these states are going to be opening up with recreational drugs, and how that's going to affect your drug testing? And have you guys figured that out yet? Because I know we sure haven't.
No, we have not. It's one of the things, honestly, Bill, we've had our Crane Operator Safety Award for, I think, 5 to 6 years, and we've yet to have anybody apply who has failed a drug test. So far, all the applications have been no, that they have not failed anything. I think it's something that we are looking at, and we'll try to figure something out. But federal law is that you cannot be under the influence. So I think that that's our stand, whether it's recreational or not. If you fail a drug test, you fail a drug test.
Okay, thank you.
Beth, let me add to that too. You're right. It's a federal guideline that most of our members clients follow. So whether it's a state law or not, it really doesn't come into play because the federal law supersedes that. So that's been the guideline to date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Steve?
Yes, well, thank you, Beth. Appreciate your report as always, and thanks for touring the local 5 training facility. These training facilities around the United States are like the best kept secret, so we always want to encourage people like you to come in to see what we do to provide the best trained workforce in the world. So.
Do you know what, Steve? And one other thing I want to mention, which I was remiss for not mentioning, we have a foundation that does workforce development. And one of the things that the foundation will be doing is working on curriculum. So I know our foundation director was there and had some conversation with Lee Worley, so that looking for some guidance and direction when we start putting the curriculum together. So we're looking forward to working with you guys on that as well.
Well, great. Well, that's a very timely request because Lee Worley is up next. He could give us more information on that. And so we're with Lee Worley. Lee is the Executive Director of the Ironworkers National Training Fund and has a huge job in maintaining the backbone of our organization, as we refer to it as, is making sure that we have training facilities like Beth toured all around the United States, and they have a very high level of proficiency and inspections and criteria that they have to meet. So I asked Lee to get here to give everyone an update on activities for 2021. Lee was featured on a webinar from the Safety Department earlier this year to allay any fears that training would be hampered by the COVID-19 pandemic, that training would continue despite any obstacles, what was going on in the workplace. So please welcome Lee Worley.
Thanks, Steve, and everybody else. Hope everybody's or staying safe through these tough times. Like Steve said, throughout this pandemic, all of us have been challenged, and our training centers were not left unaffected. I just want to reassure maybe the non-ironworkers on this call that even though all our training centers, everybody closed down in the spring due to COVID, that we had some regulations put in place. We follow the state and federal regulations for slowly reopening our training centers, had protocols in place. So just to give a brief outline of what happened with our training, the Ironworkers have had a distance learning plan for over 15 years, and we've had an Ironworker LMS system for about 3 years. The distance learning plan was used by some of our locals that had large jurisdictions where apprentices lived hundreds of, maybe even thousands of miles away from the training center, and getting to class weekly or nightly was not possible. It wasn't used a lot. just by chance, a year ago, my staff and I redeveloped the distance learning plan to match our LMS system. So we had the controls in place. So when our training centers did reopen, or excuse me, while they were closed, they were still able to put on some training courses to the apprentices and journeymen through our LMS. And we had, at the beginning, we had 2 webinars a week to get our training coordinators and their staff up to speed to give them admin user rights for the LMS and how to do the distance learning properly. So, you can't be an ironworker by reading a book. We had an instructor in front of a camera or their phone or whatever you want to call it, instructing the apprentices, and they still did their student workbooks and did their test. We did have to put the practical portion on hold until the training centers did reopen. But with all the protocols and controls in place, we got caught up during the summer. Usually the summertime is usually our slow period, but we got caught up. And let me tell you something, it was a blessing in disguise, this distance learning plan and LMS. We had everything in order. So just to give you a few other bullet points Steve asked me to bring about, we totally redid the wind turbine materials. We've got quite a bit of offshore turbines going on shortly on the East Coast from Delaware down to Washington, D.C. There's going to be, I imagine, hundreds of offshore wind turbines. So we updated our wind turbine materials. It's going to involve offshore training, which is not normal for us. We do work over water, but offshore is a little bit different training, and we're investigating that. And that we're going to combine the high angle rescue, the high torque bolting, and rigging practices. So that material should be done shortly. A quick update on the rigging and signal person certification. We're still in the process to be accredited. We had 118 items we had to fulfill in order to be accredited, and I think we're down to only 8. And I've got a meeting next week with the Ironworker International Certification Board to address some of these issues, and we hope to get this ball rolling in 2021 to get our accreditation going. Just to give you a brief outline with the OSHA courses, OSHA would never allow the ironworkers or any other trades to do online training at all. Everything had to be live, but then during this COVID, everybody made a few exceptions, and OSHA was one of them. So they allowed all of us to do some OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 training with the request permission beforehand. Everybody can do training up until July 21. So our apprentices, our members, we're getting their classes, so they're eligible to get on the job site to meet our contractors' needs. So online courses, they're still doing live courses occasionally, but the online courses is huge for us and all the trades. So everybody can do it virtually. For those of you that don't know, most of you on this call do know that the annual instructor conference, our 36th annual instructor conference, which is held every July in Ann Arbor, was canceled last year due to COVID. However, we did have 3 online courses to help our brand new instructors and our new coordinators. We felt that waiting a year, of course, we don't even know if we're going to have a conference this year. We're planning for it, but I'll talk about that in a minute. We felt our new coordinators and our new trainers could not wait a year for training, so we developed some online courses, and we've got over 75 people trained through this past summer on how to teach course virtually in the classroom and give the coordinators some idea on how to become an effective apprenticeship coordinator. There's a lot to that office. I always used to joke that I always got mad when an ironworker said to me, "Oh, you're apprenticeship coordinator, you got it made." Well, listen, just put your shoes on and follow me for a week. It's not an easy job. You wear many hats, and it was the greatest job I had, and I applaud all our training coordinators out there. And as we're talking about the annual instructor conference, we're planning on being live this July in Ann Arbor. However, simultaneously, we're preparing to do online courses too. So I said we had 3 online courses last year. We hope to have many more this July. I hope and pray this COVID, this vaccine is effective, and our members, and actually all of us, not just members, everybody can get back and to enjoy personal and professional lives outside their homes. It's about time. We're all sick of this. Steve, that's about all I have. Oh, one more thing about fall protection. Steve Rank, we're always having conversations about fall protection, and he's always calling me up about either our contractors or non-users, asking about what we're doing about fall protection. Should we have, what do you want to call it, a stand down day on fall protection? And it's like, for those of you who don't know, fall protection is a daily occurrence for the ironworkers, whether it's in the classroom or on the job site. I'm not saying it's second nature, but it should be. We do training every day. It's part of our core curriculum. We've got our regular Ironworker fall protection program. We're also involved in the EM 385, which is the Army Corps requirement. We've got our wind turbine high angle rescue going. So we've got many, many courses with fall protection. And like I said, Steve and we talk about this daily. I kind of joke that maybe people don't know that it's a daily part of an ironworker's life, whether in the classroom or on the job site. But I just want you to know, obviously we take our training courses very seriously. It is part of our core curriculum. And if there's any more information I can get to our contractors, just get a hold of me or Steve. I'd be happy to help you. And Steve, that's all I have, unless you have any other questions or anything you want me to talk about.
I just had one comment, and we talk a lot about the F word, fall protection, okay? And several years ago, this came up, and we worked together, and we came up with a design, a 2-story mock-up fall protection training structure that our apprentices can use to erect and dismantle. But at the same time, they can use every piece of fall rest equipment in the market today, right, Lee? And we worked together to get the first prototype out in local 84-135 in Houston, Texas. And now we're pleased to say that the Pacific Northwest has joined that with 3 training facilities that have state-of-the-art fall protection training structures that we want to use, and we want to market the hell out of it. So, and you heard General President Dean earlier talk about the upgrading and expansion of the fall protection training structures. Well, I'll be working with Lee real closely on how we can do that, how we can make it work, how we can help those training facilities that need some assistance on upgrading their existing structure, or maybe get a new one. But I'll work through Lee on that. Well, we're going to work together. But rest assured, I don't want anyone calling me saying, what are the ironworkers doing about fall protection? Are you guys going to do a stand down this week? And I called Lee, and he laughed, and that's exactly what he said. He said, Steve, don't people understand that we do fall protection every day? We do it in the classroom, on the training facilities. So it's just not an annual publicity thing for us. We focus on this every week at our training facilities. So Lee's right. It's part of the work that we do, but we're going to take it to a higher level, right, Lee?
Yep, you got it, Steve. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. I want to turn it back over to Bill Dean and Bill Brown for any final comments. I think we have a few minutes here where if they want to open up to a few questions from the audience, anyone, we're here to answer any questions.
Steve, I see on the computer there's a question here on the Q&A button.
Okay, could somebody read that, please?
Sure, Steve, I'll jump on it for you here. David wants to know, to go back to the drug testing issues, the new administration is pushing for legalizing marijuana on a federal level. So can you add any comments regarding how that would impact drug testing for the impact program or for our construction work in general?
I would have to defer to the Impact Drug-Free Workplace Task Force that's been wrestling with this issue. Just because they make it legal doesn't mean that you're not impaired, right? So I think, and I'll try to answer this the best I can, until there's a level of impairment, and maybe Bill Brown and Bill Dean can answer this better, until there's an established level of impairment, like they do alcohol, I think we're stuck with the very same situation. So I'd have to defer to the co-chairs on that particular question.
Bill Brown, go ahead.
Well, yeah, like I've got the answers. You know, this we've been wrestling with this, and we do have this task force, and I've talked to people all over the country and in Canada as well about what their thoughts are on this. We've talked to insurance carriers about what they're going to expect from us, and what they're going to cover and what they're not going to cover. We've had a lot of carriers already tell us that they're not excited at all about paying a comp case for somebody who's been smoking pot, just like the same thing if they've had too much to drink. So, you know, if the feds do legalize this, we're going to have to come up with a solution pretty quick, but it's going to have to be a collaborative effort with groups like Beth's group and, you know, AGC, different, the mechanical contractors. You know, we've got all kinds of guys out there who are going in different directions because we don't know what direction to go to. But if this does happen and the feds do legalize this, we're going to have a big kettle of fish, I can tell you that. I do know that the state of Colorado, after they legalized recreational marijuana, started experimenting with the highway patrol roadblocks and testing what they think they have something which can show impairment, not necessarily a percentage like we do in alcohol, but they can't write tickets on it yet because it hasn't been proven. And this has been going on for like a year and a half. I also know that the teenage car accident rate has gone up 400% in the state of Colorado since they passed that law. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us here, whether they pass this federally or not. So anyway, Bill?
No, Bill, you give the best answer there. I always give, when I had locals under supervision in Michigan, everybody up there had a drug card. I always told them that doesn't excuse you to fail a drug test on the job site. That's for recreational use or whatever. That has nothing to do with work. So unlike you, I don't see them paying a lot of workers' comp bills if they're impaired.
Well, right now, if you catch a guy, you know, he could have smoked a joint 3 weeks ago and he still turns up on a Saturday in the party van going to the Mizzou game, you know, and it doesn't impair him, but he flunks the test. So I don't know the science that they're going to have to come up with something.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. We do have a minute or two left here. I got to get on a call at 3 o'clock, but is there anybody that's got a quick question they want to ask or anything that can't wait till the next time? Seeing none, I'll start off with, I'd like to thank all the presenters and everybody that was here today. I thought we had a very good meeting. Got to take my hat off to Steve and Wayne and Jeff and Christy and Sandy. They've done a good job here with this, and also to Pete. He does a very good job with the safety call every month. So with that, I'd like to wish everybody a happy holidays and stay safe, and let's do what we can to try to see each other next year. I'd be glad to get to see people. Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, just real quick, same ditto what Bill just said, but also I noticed at one time we broke 165 participants on this call, which I think is fantastic. And so thank you for everybody for being here, and enjoy your holiday season. Is Eric still on there?
I think he's already at the next call.
Okay. All right, Steve, close it up.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Bill, for all you do and connecting all of us together that need updates on things that affect our business and our members. So much thanks to everybody, and we'll catch you in the future.